No, I'm a shirt and pants. I'm wearing everything, but not my fancy shoes, Aaron. Hey, thanks everybody, and welcome to another Telling It Like It Is. My name is Jade Alberts, the founder of Peer Guidance. This is Telling It Like It Is. It's a live show. If you have any questions, put them in there. If you're watching this after the fact, again, put your questions in there. They will get answered. Again, I want to get a little housekeeping out of the way. The Alberta Technology Symposium is April 26th and 27th. The link will be in the comments section shortly. To find out information about that, click on it. The early bird tickets are on sale now. Startup TNT Top 20 event is Thursday. 3 streams. Go to tnt.com. We'll get there. And of course, we are hosting a mental wellness event with Collectively Tangled with Karen Sarah. I am excited about this event. It's February 27th. The link will be there as well. But we are here to continue our inclusion month, and I love today's guest, and I'm excited about it. I've spent a little bit of time with them. We got to meet. They pitched at the Startup TNT event, and it's one of the most powerful starts to any pitch I saw. Nabeel and Erin, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having us today, Jade.
Doing well. Thank you, Jade.
Oh, no, absolutely. I just love your guys' story. I love what you're trying to do. Even the background from Aaron and your history and why, how it made you think about how you're going to take Pedesting and becoming a partner in the company. So again, why don't you guys start off and share, how you co-founded or how you founded this company, Aaron, and how you became involved?
Sure. I'll give a quick start. I'm an architect, and I met Nabeel, who was at the time an asset manager for a large commercial real estate company. We met professionally, and Nabeel turned to me at one point and said, you're an architect, huh? Like, why do you guys design buildings that don't work for me? And for any of you in the audience, Nabeel uses a power wheelchair to get around. And, it's a question that kind of rocked me. Like, I could have given him a simple answer, like I follow the code. That's all that we're supposed to do. But I really realized, what? There's something here. This kid, he's younger than me. He doesn't understand architecture, but he certainly understands the problems with architecture when it comes to mobility. So that's how we got started. We decided, let's just hang out. We've become extremely good friends, co-founders. We're almost brothers, how well we know each other, And it's been lovely. Like, I've learned a lot from Nabeel. You would think it'd be the other way around, but it's not, I can assure you. So I'd like to hear what Nabeel wants to say.
And that was a very quick overview of how it started. And when we started hanging out, I am beginning to realize some of the day-to-day challenges that I face on a day-to-day basis, even coming to a simple meeting at office hour. Sometimes I would go there the day before to see what the pickup and drop off might look like, or what the elevator might be, or if a meeting will last a couple of hours, will the washrooms work for me? So from a lived experience and kind of got exposed to some of the day-to-day challenges. So that's how Pedesting was born, to provide a navigation tool for people, for all pedestrians, to know how to get the way around outdoors and indoor buildings.
It's, I guess, for someone who never has to think about it, and then I'm going to, chime in on kind of what Aaron said, right? Why are you building buildings? And the more time that I've spent with you, the more time that I've started to think about it and notice that, how are you going to get it? And just like Aaron, how you started that off, saying your speech at the TNT or your pitch at the TNT, and saying the only thing that differentiates me from Nabeel is one stare. And every time I go somewhere, I think about, how come we can't do this? Why isn't there, like, if I had to walk in that stair and do what Nabeel does into that building or into a campus or anything along those lines, I wouldn't know what to do. I just take it for granted. So I think it's such a need out there. So why don't we talk about the need of learning and how Pedesting is going to help people?
I'll take a quick stab at that. It is amazing. I learned fairly quickly that to understand good accessibility, one needs to understand disability. And there's a lot of different kinds of disability. Even in the mobility space, there's nuances and differences between how people with mobility challenges get around. And so the first thing I remember latching onto was this incredible need for independence that someone with a disability has. You and I take that for granted. We can go and do almost anything we want to. So when someone with a disability has that independence, they feel empowered. The flip side of that is isolation. There's a lot, in a city like Calgary with almost 1.5 million people, there are probably between 1 and 200,000 with a mobility challenge. And, you look around downtown at a campus, you don't see that 10%, 10 to 15%. You might see less than 1%. So I find if you can solve that independence problem and give people with a disability a tool to feel confident when they go out, I think we might see more representation. That's what Nabeel and I are firmly hoping for. That's what we want to see as a result.
And what's interesting about that bit is we can't talk about inclusion without being represented. So that's kind of what our North Star. Let's increase the opportunity to be represented, and then you can talk about inclusion. So that's kind of, I think, that impact Frank will make is to increase that representation of all people.
And that's, I mean, we've had this conversation, right? And that's something that you want. You want it to be all people, not just the mobility challenged. I mean, that's something that, I mean, as a company and as a startup, and this is what we do. We talk to a lot of startups, and as you mentioned yesterday, it's a roller coaster, and it's an analogy everybody uses, right? So, how have you guys talked about managing that? It should be for everybody, but it's really going to help more. And how are we going to reach everybody?
Cool.
I think we as we are designing Pedesting, we're taking up 20%. I'm 8% design role. For if you design something for the 20% that being excluded or not part of a massive, and you focus on that group, it will work for everybody. So this is why we're super focused on the accessibility component and how we do that. If we establish relationships with all the asset owners, so whether you're talking about an office tower, post-secondary, conference center, airport, city, public gathering spaces, and we get the architectural drawings, and we are able to identify what we call aids or barriers to mobility, that layer of information on the pedestrian space that does not exist anywhere. And so by having that level of detail, it can help anyone from whoever mobility device to a senior who is in a walker, or even young parents with kids on baby strollers. So that's how we are appealing to everyone. And I
Yeah, your question was, how do you get that? The 20% is roughly people with different kinds of disabilities, vision loss, hearing, and mobility. That other 80%, Nabeel's exactly right. If you design a building taking into account that 20% that have challenges, the other 80% use it just fine. A powered door opener is a great example. It was really meant for people that have limited strength, but a lot of people during COVID especially would not touch those door handles. So suddenly we're all using it. We're all seeing a benefit, and that you can extrapolate that to almost anything in the design world. You make it work for someone who has a challenge, and the people who don't will actually find it a perfectly useful and maybe even better than a tool or something they've used. A great analogy, Jade, is we focus, like our mandate is to help people with disabilities, to give them a tool to get around. But if the market is all pedestrians, we all get out of our car or off the train at some point. We all go into a building and don't know. The Plus 15 is a great example. It's been around since I was a kid, and I get lost almost every time I go in it. So it's a very challenging indoor environment for anybody, especially a newcomer to Calgary. So helping people get around indoors is something that we feel really strongly about. So we think of it, we have an analogy that it's like a chocolate, and the accessibility part of it is that caramel, chewy, beautiful center. But the chocolate itself is everybody. And so when people look at Pedesting, we want them to see this chocolate, knowing that there's something pretty special inside. And that's how we think of it. It's for everyone, but you can't take your focus off that main group. That's always been, it's not hard for us because that's what we believe in. We solve this problem for the disabled, and everybody can benefit.
No, I definitely, I can see that. And I know that there are mandates made for buildings coming forward and things along those lines. How is that going to be working into your business plan and your growth strategy when new buildings are coming in? And obviously, Erin, you can speak to this a little bit as an architect. Are you seeing a change in philosophy from the building, the design side of things, all the way down? I mean, as we get older, as our boomers get older, my parents are now, 75 plus, and they're not going places they don't want to go because it's just going to be too hard for them. So are we seeing a shift in not only the building design, but in general as a society?
Yeah, I would think there's been a shift. It depends how far back you go. Barrier-free legislation is really only about 30 years old. And Nabeel and I have been a little bit involved with the code people down in Ottawa, been to some symposiums. It takes about 5 years for anything to really change, maybe even 10. And it gets watered down. Industry, lobbyists, everybody wants things the way to stay the status quo. So two answers to that. The code is the bare minimum. And I've been in plenty of brand new buildings, both Nabeel and I, that aren't accessible, that don't work, even though they meet the code. So I guess I've taken my eyes off the code a long time ago. The second answer to that is Rick Hansen has come up with a certification program, much like LEED did with energy in buildings, energy use. But it's about accessibility, and you get rated. Your building gets rated. If you score high enough, you get a certification or a gold. If you're higher, I think 80% is about what you have to achieve. Nabeel and I have both taken the class. And as an architect, I was probably 25, 30 years into my career when I took that class 5 years ago. Amazing how much I learned and how much farther above the code. It really, they have a term, meaningful accessibility, and that means it really works. And they do take into account vision loss. The building code right now, there's very little that in the building code that addresses vision loss. Those tactile strips you see at the tops of stairs and ramps are about the only thing, and there's so many other things that could happen. You're starting to hear elevators talk to you, door closing, or fifth floor. That's very helpful to someone that can't see the elevator screen. So I think there's two things. The code is something that's slow to change. And that's what most architects use as their guide. Rick Hansen is really out in front of this. And Nabeel and I have taken the tack. Let's go right to the building owners. Let's not wait for code to change. Let's not insist that Rick Hansen, that they certify their buildings. Let's just help them understand the business case about good accessibility. And that has proven to be resounding, and that it really resonates with these asset owners, that they want to understand how to increase their market. One guy even said, as an asset manager, I can't stand knowing there's something I don't understand about my asset. And that, Nabeel, at being an asset manager, we latched on to that. That's really important, to help them understand that there are aspects of their building that they don't really understand yet, perhaps. And we can help them. Pedesting can help.
Yeah, and we're going to briefly on and comment some provinces in Canada have adopted their own accessibility act. And so, for example, in BC and Manitoba right now, they're mandating all post-secondary institutions to come up with an accessibility plan on how they want to address accessibility by the end of this year, with the hope of implementation of that strategy over the next 2-3 years. So there's lots of things happening at the provincial level and at the federal level. So it's great to see that momentum happening from a public policy perspective. But as Erin said, we really want to work with the private sector or public sector are moving at an even faster than what public policy might be at the moment.
Well, it's good to see that and know that you're being proactive, because waiting for government, as you say, it could be a long time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is, right? So, but I mean, so let's talk a little bit about your business. So I know you've said that you've gone to the private. You've talked about the plus 15. Who are you? What kind of people are you targeting? You said post secondary. So how is that going? And I'm sure it's probably helpful, Erin, to have like you guys are like the super team, right? Somebody who understands the building and the architecture and has been there, can speak to it and to speak to where it's going. And obviously someone who like, I mean, I love, if you put everybody to walk a day in Nabeel's shoes, I'm sure that would really change everybody's philosophy on it.
Yeah, it's true. Drew Farrell, a former councilwoman, used to have these, I can't remember what she called them, but she would get different devices. Some clouded your visions. It was like macular degeneration, wheelchairs, crutches, a few other things, earphones so you couldn't hear. And we would tour downtown, 15, 20, 30 people. And that was amazing. Why don't you take
it? Yeah, I was going to say, like, when we think about what type of locations we want to have on the app, we want to follow a person's life. So, like, getting educated for that, as an example. So that's one of the things where we're working with or talking with some of the post-secondary institutions in Calgary right now. But the goal is to start there across Canada. After we have one or two in Calgary, but then after that, we think after getting educated, you want to go apply for a job. So that's another aspect where we're talking with office style owners down in Calgary, and the capture.
Yeah, that's sort of how we see it. We look at it, what are already hot, what we call hot pedesting zones where pedestrians gather. So that could be a sporting event, a museum. Universities are always been at the top of our list because that's where a person's life really starts, getting a little bit more education than you get in high school. It's a great community. If you think about it, they're like little cities, outdoor space, indoor space, transit connections. And it can be very challenging for someone with a disability. So having that ease of learning built in, I guess part of maybe some of your audience may not even understand, well, what does Pedesting do? It's not unlike Google Maps or Waze in that it provides navigation, but it's strictly for the pedestrian. So we're talking about pedestrian space, sidewalks, as opposed to roads, parks, any outdoor space, plazas, and then indoors. That's where Nabeel once told me, indoors is where things fall apart for me. That's where I meet most of my barriers. So that's there's a few companies out there working on indoor navigation. You're not connected to GPS, so that there's some challenges with it. But for us, it was gathering the data, the architectural data about the built environment. Where are the barriers? Where are the aids? Whether that's a ramp or a power door opener, or in this case, a staircase, something we all use every day. Nabeel has to find a way around it. So if he can do that from the comfort of his home or before he gets there, he feels a lot more confident. I know how I'm getting to that elevator bank, as opposed to going through the front door that has a staircase or no power door opener. So Pedesting is a tool that helps you find those aids to mobility. And eventually it'll have voiceover so people with vision loss can use it. It can talk to them about what they're going to encounter and how to avoid the pitfalls that they might find.
Yeah, and also I think we get quite often, well, what if things change in the built environment? How do you plan to address that? And that was the community, that where we will rely on the community to help us get informed of the temporary barrier that day. For example, if the elevator was down that day, our community will let us know that there might be something wrong, in that space that day. So It's a combination of providing authoritative um, planning and real-time information.
I'm guessing that real-time information is so important for, for the mobility. If you get down there and you find out, then what? I guess as a, I know that when you have to, when you book your bus and things like that, you've got a window, you got to be there. If it leaves, you might, and if you don't know that's something, that the elevator's down or something's wrong ahead of time, that's obviously changes the entire aspect of your day.
Yeah, and when we talked to some users, and one of them was explaining to them that all they wanted to do was to go out to a restaurant with their friends, and they called the restaurant. They told them it was accessible inside, but when they got there, there was one step or two steps, and they were in the power wheelchair that weighs 500 pounds. So in that case, that person had to go home and watch Netflix and can't hang out with their friends. So that was really disheartening to hear, but also excites us of how impactful Redesting can be by providing that information.
I mean, even us at Startup TNT changed our location to because of that, right? I mean, between yourself and Sean, who will be, he'll be, I'll be on next week, and Colton's partner, she came to, Briggs, and it was like, yeah, sorry, you can't get in. It's like, I mean, again, it wasn't even something we thought about. It's not something that and then I was like, you know what? We're changing. We've met people there. We got to be, if we're an inclusive community, we got to make sure everybody can have access to it. So I guess, just, again, meeting yourself and Sean and Colton's partner has, really even changed a lot of people's focus on pedesting and how people move.
Yeah, and they've been really exciting to see that we're talking to customers like Perfect and they've offered towers. The message seems to be resonating, and awareness has increased exponentially. I would say, like, we've been part of the accessibility space for 5 years now, and where it was 5 years compared to where it is now, it really excites us about how the momentum is getting louder and louder. So we are pretty excited about what we're building.
Yeah, and your example at Startup TNT, that's the kind of experience we're having with the private sector. They're starting to realize I'm not as good a corporate citizen as I thought I was. They're all realizing this is another challenge. And as Canadians, we never back away from things like this. We're an incredibly unique society in that we absorb and adopt and all kinds of differences in the people that live here. And that's one of the things that makes Canada a beautiful country. And on the other side of that, you've got this disabled community. When you mentioned earlier that, if I were in Nabeel's shoes and I got to a place that wasn't accessible, I don't know what I would do. Well, when you live that life, you realize they're incredibly innovative. People with disabilities, they have to be by nature. Getting out of bed can be a challenge. Everything is a challenge, and yet they're resilient. And I hate to sort of talk about them like there's something else, but I am always amazed at the people I meet, like Sean, like Nabeel. I've met hundreds that are just absolutely, they personify the underdog. The one that you don't think you want to bet on is always the one that seems to win, and that's what I love about putting those two things together, our society and this very intense group of people that have this ability to do things a little differently, a little better than you would ever imagine. And so having a tool hopefully will just explode that.
And you know what? That's just back-to-back weeks that has come up. And when Amber and Ty were on last week, and we talked about the LGBTQ2S plus community, saying that, well, you know what? There's so many bright people that are not given a chance because of the way they're viewed in society. Obviously very, very wrong point of view. But once they're given that chance, they just think differently. And your point to saying the challenges that Nabeel has saying has so many, can look at so many things, so many different ways in business and life in general that can really add to a company. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also I think that unique perspective provides that lens to looking at problem solutions, and yeah, I think it can have a great impact whether it's in the workplace or public sector, whether you're talking public policy. I think it'll go back to being out and about and being represented, and then you can see that report effect everywhere. Not just how we build spaces, but how we approach problems and solutions. That diverse thinking exponentially increases when you have everybody at the table. So.
No, absolutely. I know we've talked about this a little bit about Pedesting and what you're doing, but what's next? So let's maybe what's your kind of short term and maybe 5 or 10 year plan?
Great. Well, thank you. Well, the short term is to do like a complete pilot project of really onboarding a city. So that means different use cases with the public transit, office building, conference center, airports, and really profile Calgary as a truly accessible city. But at the same time, we would love to expand across the country, specifically in our post-secondary institutions, because that's where it starts. But we're always open to working with all types of asset owners if it makes sense. So while we are focusing in Calgary, we're looking to expand to Western Canada, in some parts of Eastern Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah, we used to kind of, I guess part of our tagline 3 years ago was we want to make Calgary the most accessible city in Canada. And we just sort of thought, well, why not make Canada the most accessible country in the world? Let's just think of this as a Canadian initiative. And that's it. That is our goal, to start here. We've got our MVP that we've just finished beta testing. We're going to make a few changes to it, but we're ready to go live this spring and take our lumps, because we want to learn from other people's use of the app and how to make it better. And we'll continue. We're already starting to reach out to some post-secondary schools, and they're reaching out to us as well. We're starting to get known. Rick Hansen's going to be a great help in that, because he's located in BC and he knows a lot of the players. Airports, universities, downtowns. That's the start. We used to tell Nabeel, I had a professor that would say a city's like a chocolate chip cookie. It's mostly cookie, but those chocolate chips, those are the monuments, the old cathedrals or the museums. But we look at it like those chocolate chips are our pedesting zones, the places people congregate and get together in large numbers as pedestrians. And that's universities, sports events, museums, the core, shopping malls, airports. So those are those are our big targets, I guess you could call it. That's what we go after.
And then we'll say, in terms of like the long-term plan, we would love to expand to other countries like the US, or even expand in Europe or Asia, because, for example, Japan is considered one of the top accessible cities in the world, because of a high concentration of people who are visually impaired. So, we are always thinking about expanding in other geographic locations if it makes sense, and it will have a great impact, on the local demographic in that place.
Interesting fun fact, Jade, that the disabled community is the largest minority on Earth, about 1.4 billion people. So you think about that. once we've started to prove our point in Canada, we think it is going to organically start to affect a lot of other countries, because everybody's faced with this challenge, no matter what kind of country it is or how big or small. They know what we're talking about, the disabled community and the planners themselves.
No, absolutely. And of course, if anybody wants to find out more information about Pedesting, click on the website in the comments section. I've also added the CBC link there from, it was a great, great clip that was about a 4.5 minute clip or so. So it's up there. So if anybody wants to watch that, click on it. You'll learn a lot more about Pedesting as well. And the other thing that I can say that's never happened before in this conversation is that I've had 2 dessert analogies, one chocolate bar and one cookie. I've never had that before.
That's funny.
No, I think before I go to my next meeting, I'm just going to have a cookie, I think.
Well, make sure that you think about Pedesting every having a cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm always sad when our conversations come to an end, but this question I've asked almost 255 times because I love the answers, I love the passion, and I love what I hear from fellow entrepreneurs. So, we'll start with you, Erin. But if you had one piece of advice for a startup or an entrepreneur, what would that be?
You learn to have a thick skin, because rejection is going to be a daily routine that you'll need to grapple with. But I know Nabeel has a much fuller answer than me. I would just say, in your search, in your networking, in your everyday life, every stone, you need to turn over every stone, because you will find something there that will help you. You'll look back and go, man, I'm so glad I met that person, or I took that meeting I didn't have time for. It's all, we all know that you need to pivot and you need to respond, but you're responding to those little things. The big things are obvious, but those little things that aren't so obvious, that's what I've been amazed at. Absolutely amazed at how much I've learned from something at first I didn't give much attention to, and it turned out to be a major part of how I think now. So that would be my advice. Don't ever discount the little meeting, the person you don't think is that important. You're going to learn, and it's going to help you. It's going to help you a lot.
Nice. Nabeel?
It's a Zen thing, I think.
Yeah, like one more familiar with, I'm a type A personality. I like everything perfect, tidy. But as an entrepreneur, I've learned a lot about speed and learning fast. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Pivot, learn, iterate, and also be comfortable. Don't be afraid to ask for help or advice. Especially in the ecosystem like Calgary, we found it to be very supportive. And when we are in it together, the boat rises with the tide. So that's kind of my advice. Don't be afraid to take that leap of faith, and don't make it will keep you making mistakes.
It's important to make mistakes, to be honest. That's how
absolutely.
Learn. That's how you refine.
That's how you learn. That's how you learn. No, I really, that's great advice, and I love it. And again, I really, really thank you guys for coming on, sharing your story, making me hungry for some sugar right now, Erin. I appreciate that. But all in all, it was a great conversation. And for anybody to learn more about Pedesting, please click on the comments section, the website. The CBC article is there as well. We are hosting a mental wellness event February 27th for any entrepreneurs. We have Kira and Sarah, who are from Collectively Tangles, that are registered psychologists. So we are going to focus on the mental wellness, because as Nabeel just said, it's a journey you don't have to take alone, and asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And that's what we're all here to do. So thank you guys for taking a little time out of your day, sharing your story. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Likewise, and thanks for having us today. It was awesome having this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jay. This has been fantastic. You're amazing.
I enjoyed it. I surely enjoyed it, and I hope you gentlemen have a great day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.